Do y'all remember last Friday, when I did a live stream on my channel, basically talking about or going over the meeting that Donald Trump had with the president of South Africa, and we were sitting there saying some of these things don't make any sense, and we was looking at the facial expressions of the president, and he was looking like he didn't believe any of it either, and he was like, I never seen any of these things before. Well, turns out that some of our hunches was correct. Even when one of my hunches, when I was saying, I bet you some of the stuff that Donald Trump is showing in these articles, I bet you none of this was in South Africa. Well, turns out that that hunch was correct, but there was some other things that was debunked as well. And we're going to go over that right now. And I am recording this on May 24th, 2025. And this article I'm reading from is coming from Reuters. And the crazy part about it is, if I had known about this the day of my live stream, I could have had this in that live because the article came out the day before on that Thursday. I just was unaware that that was the case. U.S. President Donald Trump showed a screenshot of Reuters video taken in the Democratic Republic of Congo as part of what he falsely presented on Wednesday as evidence of mass killings of white South Africans. That was one of the things that I had said. I said, I don't think that this is going on in South Africa. I said, I bet you that none of this is occurring in South Africa like he claims. And turns out this was happening in the Congo. So my assumption was correct on that one. He's quoted as saying, "These are all white farmers that are being buried," said Trump, holding up a printout art of an article accompanied by the picture during a contentious Oval Office meeting with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. In fact, the video published by Reuters on February 3rd and subsequently verified by the news agency's fact-check team showed humanitarian workers lifting body bags in the Congolese city of Goma. The image was pulled from Reuters footage shot following deadly battles with Rwanda-backed M23 rebels. The blog post showed to Ramaphosa by Trump during the White House meeting was published by American Thinker, a conservative online magazine about conflict and racial tensions in South Africa and Congo. The post did not caption the image, but identified it as a quote YouTube screen grab with a link to a video news report about Congo on YouTube, which credited Reuters. The White House did not respond to a request for comment. Andrea Widberg, managing editor at American Thinker and the author of the post in question, wrote in reply to a Reuters query that Trump had, quote, misidentified the image. Well, that's not a good thing if he's holding up this image right here and he's claiming that these people are going through a genocide. To simply say that he misidentified the image is very disingenuous. She added, however, that the post, which referred to what it called Ramaphosa's dysfunctional race-obsessed Marxist government, had pointed out the increasing pressure placed on the white South Africans. The footage from which the picture was taken shows a mass burial following an M23 assault on Goma, filmed by Reuters journalist Jafar al-Kantanti. That day, it was extremely difficult for journalists to get in. I had to negotiate directly with M23 and coordinate with the ICRC to be allowed to film, al-Kantanti said. Only Reuters has video. Al-Kantanti said seeing Trump holding the article with the screen grab of his video came as a shock. In view of all of the world, President Trump used my image, used what I filmed in DRC, or the Democratic Republic of Congo, to try to convince President Ramaphosa that in his country, white people are being killed by black people. Ramaphosa visited Washington this week to try to mend ties with the United States after persistent criticism from Trump in recent months over South Africa's land laws, foreign policy, and alleged bad treatment of its white minority, which South Africa denies. Trump interrupted that televised meeting with Ramaphosa to play a video, which he said showed evidence of genocide of white farmers in South Africa. This conspiracy theory, which has circulated in far-right chat rooms for years, is based on false claims. Trump then proceeded to flip through printed copies that he said detailed murders of white South Africans, saying death, 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 horrible death. Furthermore, I went on to another website and got some more additional information as well. So we're going to go over that as well. It said President Donald Trump created quite the spectacle during Wednesday's Oval Office meeting with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in his attempt to bolster his claim of a white genocide happening in the country. However, some of the evidence Trump presented has turned out to be false. Trump displayed numerous printed articles and played a nearly 5-minute-long video montage to reporters at the White House that he claimed proved that white Afrikaner farmers were the victims of a genocide in South Africa. Death, 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 Trump said as he held up one printed article after another after playing the video of what he claimed were burial sites of over 1,000 white farmers who were murdered by presumably black South Africans. However, factcheck.org has determined that the video actually showed a 2020 demonstration, not a burial site, to bring attention to the deaths of farmers of all races and not just white farmers. And remember, he basically made the claim that it was only white farmers that were being genocided out there. He kept saying that over and over again. If y'all saw the live, whether you saw it while we were live or in the playback, he kept emphasizing that. President Trump also displayed an image of what he claimed were body bags of white farmers who had been murdered in South Africa. However, Reuters reported that the image was of humanitarian workers burying bodies in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The outlet said the image was a screen grab of a Reuters video in February after deadly battles against Rwanda-backed rebels who had captured the city of Goma. Trump's insistence on a white genocide taking place in South Africa follows years of conspiracy theories from far-right fringe groups. It has been amplified by South African-born billionaire Elon Musk, surprise, surprise, who is a close advisor to the president and leads the White House Department of Government Efficiency, also known as DOGE. While crime in South Africa is high, data proves that most murder victims in the country, more than 26,000 in 2024, were actually black. As for farmers themselves, only 44 murders were linked to farmers. Only 7 of those murders were white. At the heart of the real conflict with farmers in South Africa is the disproportionate amount of land owned by white Afrikaner farmers as a result of the country's decades-long apartheid system, which segregated and disenfranchised black South Africans. Though they comprise only 7% of the population, they own 75% of the land. A law signed by President Cyril Ramaphosa in January intended to begin a legislative process to redress land inequality. It essentially allows the government to seize private land. President Trump has repeatedly pointed to the law as evidence of white farmers being targeted. However, the South African government has said no land has been seized. The government also said it instead tried to encourage white farmers to willingly sell their land, reports Reuters. Trump's fascination with pushing falsehoods about South Africa and the treatment of white farmers has been criticized by activists as an attempt to push a white grievance politics that mirrors Trump's anti-DEI policies in the United States. In a global context, Trump is seeking to fully normalize white exceptionalism and white grievance, which necessitates sullying and then destroying the beauty of black resistance and black excellence, which are like kryptonite in the face of radicalized version of whiteness. Joseph Tolton, a Pan-African activist and founder of Interconnected Justice, previously told the outlet. He continued, as a master race, he knows well that black resistance and black excellence must be fully eviscerated in order to realize Trump's global vision of the unbridled rule of whiteness. So there you have it. There's more additional information right there. Like I said, it was just nothing but a bunch of lies, and they ended up debunking every last one of them. And I could tell that they were, because it's like, even when I was in my chat and looking in the comments, people were telling me where those articles most likely came from. But like I said, I wish I would have known about this when I did the live last Friday, and I could have incorporated them in there. But you know what? We know about it now. But something just seemed kind of off when I was going through that. I'm like, where? Because even I asked in the live, where did those articles come from? Who are they? Because and when the president said, where's that from? I've never seen that before. That's because it wasn't in South Africa, which is, again, something that I had assumed. I said, I bet you that these images aren't even in South Africa, and they weren't. They were in the Congo, which is a whole nother country in Africa. So, but the thing is, he's already now ingrained into his supporters' minds that there's a genocide, and since most of them are on this black fatigue, quote unquote, in this anti-white kick or this replacement, whatever, right now, they're going to eat up anything that he says, especially if it inflates and plays into their, I guess you could say, their insecurities or their ego. So right now, the lie has already traveled around so many times that that's what they're internalizing, that even when this comes out and has been debunked, they're still going to say, but still there's a genocide going on, even though there clearly isn't. Because you got to think, again, why would only 59 come over here? And you don't see the wealthy white South Africans leaving. Apparently they're not having a problem. Even people over in South Africa are saying that there is no genocide. What is he talking about? But, you know, all they got to do is say one thing that disparages us and victimizes them, and they're prepared to take off and run with it and not look back, leaving the truth in the dust. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments, and I will talk to you in the next one.